Welcome back to Terror Stories, the place where nightmares find a voice. Before we begin tonight's tale, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss another story that will haunt your sleep. And if you're brave enough, leave a comment below telling us what chills you the most. Now, turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and prepare yourself. Because tonight's story is not just a tale, it's a warning. They say every caregiver takes on more than just the pain of their patients. But what if the job was never about medicine, or kindness, or care, but about survival? Tonight, we follow Elise, a young caregiver who accepts a night shift at a crumbling old nursing home. Her patient, an elderly woman who should have died years ago, but hasn't. At midnight, the doors rattle, the windows whisper, and Elise learns the horrifying truth. Caregivers don't just protect their patients, they pay the price in their place. The caregiver. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Elise Morrow arrived at Hollow Pines nursing home. She stood under the archway, suitcase in hand, her umbrella trembling against the relentless wind. The building loomed before her, a crumbling relic from another century. Its stone walls were streaked with moss, its windows dark and smeared like tired eyes that hadn't closed in decades. Elise told herself this was just another job. She had cared for dozens of patients over the years, some frail, some angry, some teetering between worlds. But this one was different. She had been contacted directly by the family of Margaret Hale, an elderly woman with no surviving children and no one left to tend to her but distant relatives who wanted nothing to do with her. The pay was generous. Too generous. Enough to make Elise ignore the gnawing unease she'd felt from the first phone call. The arrival inside Hollow Pines smelled of antiseptic and damp wood. The halls stretched long and narrow, lined with faded wallpaper that peeled like old skin. The air was unnaturally cold, as though the building itself exhaled frost. The head nurse, a severe woman named Mrs. Redmond, greeted Elise with a stiff handshake. "You'll be taking the night shifts," Mrs. Redmond explained, her voice clipped. "Mrs. Hale is difficult. She refuses most of the staff. You may find her moods unsettling, but your job is simple. Keep her calm. Ensure she eats and never—" She paused. Her lips thinned. "Never leave her room after midnight." Elise blinked. "Never leave her room?" "Those are the family's instructions," Mrs. Redmond said flatly. "I suggest you follow them." Something flickered behind the nurse's eyes, something Elise didn't like. But she nodded anyway. Money first. Questions later. The patient Margaret Hale's room was at the far end of the east wing, away from the other residents. The door was heavy oak with a tarnished brass knob. Elise knocked softly and stepped inside. The woman in the bed looked more like a wax figure than flesh. Skin papery thin, stretched taut over jutting bones. Her hair, once silver, was now yellowed and wispy, clinging to her skull. But her eyes, those eyes, were alive. Too alive. A sharp, unnatural brightness flickered in them as they tracked Elise across the room. "You're new," Margaret rasped. Her voice was low, almost a growl. "Yes, ma'am," Elise said gently, setting her bag down. "I'll be your caregiver from now on." Margaret's lips curled into something like a smile, though it twisted wrong on her face. "Good. I've been waiting for you." Elise's stomach tightened. How could she have been waiting for someone she'd never met? The first night Elise settled into the nightly routine, preparing soup, adjusting pillows, reading aloud from the books on Margaret's shelf. The woman listened intently, her sharp eyes never leaving Elise's face. Occasionally, she would mutter things Elise couldn't quite catch. As the clock crept toward midnight, Elise noticed something strange. The hallway outside Margaret's room grew quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps, no carts, no distant voices of night staff. Just silence. At exactly 12, Margaret turned her head sharply toward the door. "They come now," she whispered. "Who?" Elise asked. But Margaret only smiled. The door rattled. Elise froze. The knob twisted violently back and forth, as though someone, or something, was trying to force it open. Her heart pounded. "Mrs. Hale, is someone—" "Don't open it," Margaret hissed. "Don't you dare!" The rattling stopped. Elise sat there, paralyzed, until the clock ticked past 1. Only then did Margaret close her eyes, sighing like she had survived some storm Elise could not see. Whispers in the dark. The following nights followed the same pattern. During the day, Margaret was irritable but manageable. She spoke in riddles, often muttering about voices in the walls or the watchers behind the glass. Elise dismissed them as signs of dementia. But at night, the rattling would come. Sometimes it was the door, sometimes the windows. Once, the wardrobe in the corner shook violently, its wooden frame groaning as though something inside was desperate to claw its way out. Each time, Margaret's eyes glowed with that awful brightness. She would whisper, "Don't answer. Don't look. Don't let them in." Elise never did. But curiosity gnawed at her. Who was them? The warning. On her 5th night, Elise confronted Mrs. Redmond during a rare overlap in shifts. "Why does Margaret's door rattle every night?" Elise asked. "Is this some kind of prank? Because if it is, it's cruel." Mrs. Redmond's expression hardened. "It's no prank." "Then what is it?" The nurse hesitated. Then she leaned in close, lowering her voice. "Mrs. Hale has been here longer than anyone. She should have died years ago, but she doesn't. Not fully. The family insists she stay under our care, but—" She trailed off, her eyes flicking nervously toward the east wing. Strange things happen around her. Things best left unexplained. If you're smart, you'll finish your contract and leave. Her words settled like ice in Elise's chest. The bargain. That night, Margaret was unusually talkative. She spoke of her youth, of wealth and influence, of parties in grand halls with chandeliers that glittered like stars. But then her tone shifted. "I made a bargain," she whispered, her skeletal fingers clutching Elise's wrist. "Years ago, to live, to endure. But bargains demand payment, and the debt is never-ending." Elise swallowed hard. What kind of bargain? Margaret's smile was grotesque. The kind no God can forgive. The room grew colder. Elise's breath fogged in the air. And then the door began to rattle again. Louder, more furious. Margaret's eyes burned like coals. "They want me, but I won't go." "Not yet." "That's why you're here, Elise. Caregivers keep them out. Caregivers pay the price in my place." Elise yanked her hand away, heart racing. "What are you talking about?" But Margaret only laughed, a rasping, hollow sound. The first shadow. Around 12:30, Elise made a mistake. She stood too close to the window. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw movement. A face. It was pressed against the glass from the outside, though her room was 3 stories up. Its features were distorted, stretched unnaturally wide. Its eyes were black voids, its mouth a gaping hole that opened wider and wider until Elise staggered back in horror. The glass fogged where it breathed. "Elise," it croaked, in a voice that sounded horribly like her own. She screamed. Margaret cackled. "They like you. They'll take you if you're not careful." The haunting. From that night on, Elise was never alone. Shadows stretched too long on the walls, moving when she did not. Whispers filled the silence, hissing her name from unseen mouths. The rattling grew louder, more violent. Sometimes the entire bed shook, as though the world was tearing itself apart around Margaret. And Margaret thrived on it. Her cheeks grew less hollow, her voice stronger. The more Elise suffered, the more Margaret seemed to bloom with stolen vitality. "You see now, don't you?" she purred one night, her lips wet with soup Elise had fed her. Caregivers are vessels. They take the torment. They shield me from it, and the longer they stay, the more the watchers crave them instead. Elise realized with dawning terror that the job wasn't about caring for Margaret at all. It was about feeding her, sacrificing herself piece by piece to keep the old woman alive. The breaking point. On her 10th night, Elise snapped. The rattling had become unbearable. The wardrobe door burst open, and for the first time the shadows inside spilled into the room. Black, writhing forms with elongated fingers and mouths that opened impossibly wide. They surged toward Elise, whispering in her dead grandmother's voice, in her father's, in her own. Margaret shrieked with laughter. "Take her! Take her instead!" Elise stumbled to the door, fumbling with the knob, desperate to escape despite the warning never to leave. She flung it open. The hallway was not a hallway anymore. It was endless darkness, stretching into infinity. Shapes moved within it. Faces, hands, bodies writhing in silence. 1,000 eyes blinked open, fixing on her. She slammed the door shut, sobbing. Margaret was watching her, smiling with teeth that suddenly looked far too sharp. The choice. By dawn, Elise was broken. She couldn't survive another night. She had two choices: run and risk being swallowed by the things that lurked in the dark, or end Margaret's unnatural existence once and for all. That evening, as she spoon-fed Margaret, Elise's hands shook. In her pocket, hidden, was a syringe she had stolen from the medical cart. Enough morphine to stop a heart. Margaret seemed to sense it. Her grin widened. "Do it, little caregiver. Free me. Free yourself. But remember, debts don't die with me. They'll only find someone new." Maybe Elise's hand trembled over the syringe. She thought of the faces in the glass, the whispers, the eyes in the hallway. She thought of Margaret's growing strength, and then she plunged the needle in. Margaret's laughter turned to a scream, a high, inhuman wail that shook the walls. The shadows writhed violently, slamming against the windows, the wardrobe, the door. And then, silence. Margaret Hale was dead. The aftermath. The staff found Elise in the morning, pale and shaking, sitting beside Margaret's lifeless body. "She passed in the night," Elise said hollowly. Peacefully. They believed her. Margaret had been old, frail. Death was expected. Elise left Hollow Pines that day, vowing never to return. She told herself it was over. But that night, as she lay in her apartment, she heard it. The rattling. At her door. And a voice, soft and familiar, whispering through the wood. "Elise, caregiver. It's your turn now."